Hello and welcome to the Straight No Chaser podcast. I am your host, Bishop. And so today I am pulling back the curtain on a critical struggle at the heart of the American democracy, okay? This isn't abstract, it's a fight for your voice. See, we live under an oligarchy with a reach across all branches of government right now. This isn't just policy, y'all. It's not. It's power. And far too often, that power is channeled not for the people, but to enshrine white supremacy with some black faces, complicit in the illusion, an unfortunate illusion that we must dismantle. Life is not going to get better if we continue to sustain the fantasy, right? Because I'm going to tell you at the center of today's episode, it is the Supreme Court and how the Supreme Court is quietly creeping toward dismantling voting rights. And they're going to use race, because they're using race to do it, right? The very tool meant to ensure representation. They're using it as a pretext to strip it away. All right? So first we're going to start off with the Voting Rights Act and the origin and its purposes of that act, right? So the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was signed by Lyndon B. Johnson, right? And it was to enforce the 14th and 15th Amendments and eliminate blatant discrimination in voting, okay? Its central importance cannot be overstated, y'all. It was the most effective civil rights law in U.S. federal history, okay? Now, it also included another section, right, that had this thing called the VRA, right? Because Section 2 of that, it prohibits voting dilution by race, meaning you can't try to stop folks from voting or lower their or restrict their representation due to race, right? Now, they're gutting Section 5, right? They've already gutted that requires some jurisdictions to have changes pre-cleared due to past discrimination. They've already gutted that a lot, right? They continue to do, Republicans work very hard to make sure that your voice is not heard if you're not one of the voices they care about, right? Now, remember the Supreme Court's rollback. Now, I don't know if you all remember this, but in that, what is it here? The Shelby County versus Holder. This happened in 2013. The court struck back the pre-clearance formula. That was a part of Section 4B, which it essentially neutered Section 5. And it unleashed voter suppression in minority communities. That's what it did. And states rapidly adopted those barriers like voter roll purges, restrictive voter ID laws, and early voting cuts. Because for some strange reason, it threatens conservatives when you have more options for voting. See, they really don't want you actively engaged in your government. They just want to boss you around and tell you what to do. They want to use government to control you, all the while they tell you it's everybody else that's trying to do it. But it's essentially their party laser focused on controlling you, controlling what you have access to, what you can and cannot do, when you can do it, and how you can do it. That's conservatism in America. That's not liberalism. Now, oligarchy isn't just about a few wealthy elites. I need you to understand. It's also an orchestrated structure, blending like corporate influence with partisan courts and manipulated elections. It comes at you from multiple sides because their ultimate goal is to maintain white supremacist power. But they thinly veil it by false arguments about colorblindness. They're not colorblind. I told y'all, that's why I don't trust people who say, I don't see color. What's wrong? Your eyes don't work. The issue is not you seeing the color. The issue is what you do with that information once you see it. Are you discriminatory in your actions once you see color? Because if that's the case, well, that's where the problem is. That is where the problem is. And the law was designed to help in the way that if people would behave in ways that they shouldn't have, the law stopped you from doing that. It tried to put barriers in place where you couldn't do those things. Now you got to understand. Now, a lot of those who are coming forward, they argue that it's racist to consider race in redistricting, huh? Claiming a colorblind approach. Yet the approach that they bring to the forefront is to help white America only. So it's not colorblind at all. They weaponize race neutral tools like they use things like gerrymandering to concentrate white power, white voting power specifically. They don't have a desire to get your black vote, your Hispanic vote, your Indian vote, your Native American vote. They don't care to get it. You know why? Because if they gerrymander you out of the conversation, it's a moot point. It doesn't matter. All they got to do is market to white America. Because see, think about it. We've even seen black people in positions of power. Hey, Clarence Thomas, who either tactically accept or actively reinforce systems that harm their own communities. They don't care. It's whether it's through silence, policy choices, or co-option. They don't care. But because they see themselves as different. Well, you're not really any different to the system. You're not really any different to the beast. But you can't tell these people that. You can't tell these people back that. Like I said, Republicans have been working really hard for a really long time to tear up our government. Think back in 2020. After the 2020 census, Louisiana, home to the black population of nearly 1/3 of the population in Louisiana is black. So they initially drew a map with one majority black district. How do you do that when the state itself has nearly 1/3 of its residents are black? So, of course, it was challenged. And it was found likely to violate Section 2 for diluting black representation, because that's exactly what it was meant to do. But what happens? In response to that, the legislature in Louisiana passed a new map with a second majority black district in early 2024, which again triggered more legal challenges, because God forbid black people have representation. So in March 2025, the Supreme Court heard oral arguments on this, but they didn't rule on it. See, you guys got to understand how sneaky Republicans are trying to be, even in court. So instead of ruling on it, the court punted the case to the next term. But they quietly announced that on a Friday night when they knew you wouldn't be paying attention. Yeah. They're ordering additional arguments in the fall of 2025 when they have their new session, right? So to me, this suggests that the court is either rethinking whether Section 2 protections are designed to allow minority districts, or are they constitutionally permissible? That's what they're trying to figure out. And to me, it's a direct swipe at the legacy of certain cases that have happened where the court upheld black representation, cases like Allen versus Milligan that happened in 2023. But now we're at another time now. They don't want to do that. The court announced that, like I said, they announced that rehearing on a Friday night because they don't want the public to notice. That's how they erode democracy. One stealthy decision at a time, y'all. That's how they do it. We need things like Section 2 because it encourages race-aware maps to prevent the very dilution of minority votes. The Equal Protection Clause is often interpreted in race-neutral manner. That's what creates that tension, right? Because think about this. If the courts move to say race-conscious maps, right? If race-conscious maps right now are mandated, right? But if they move to echo what they did before, they could undermine all of it. And that's the goal, to undermine it quietly so that you don't notice. And by the time you do, it's already happened. And then you know what they're going to say? Oh, it's got to go back to Congress, knowing that Congress won't touch it because they agree. They're all in cahoots together. Now, Louisiana stands as a template to me because if they can get away with it in Louisiana, it's the roadmap for Republicans to do it all across America. Because understand, if Section 2 is invalidated, similar protections elsewhere are going to vanish. That's a guarantee. Okay? States like Texas or North Dakota are already in line to challenge or weaken minority protections. Okay? Again, they're setting it up for reduced accountability and more partisan entrenchment. Minority representation will decline and trust in institutions deteriorates, and that's exactly what the powers that be want. Chaos. Now, I'm telling you, there are things that we can do, okay? The big thing is you got to keep speaking truth and tell the truth about what's really happening. Share stories. Don't let them relegate the civil rights stuff to the past. We're always fighting for civil rights. Always. That fight never stops. It never stops because you still have people alive today that at 50, 60, 70 years ago, they were focused on making sure we had no rights. Right? You need to support the passage of the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act of 2025. That's H.R. 14. And put pressure on your elected officials to get that shit passed. Because that would restore pre-clearance with a new updated framework. You gotta get out there. We gotta be more grassroots. You gotta organize. You gotta register voters. You gotta monitor elections. Hold officials accountable, especially in the courts. Hold them accountable. You gotta advocate for judicial reforms that emphasize impartiality, not ideological conquest. We don't need that. We don't need that. And you also have to do a narrative shift. You gotta expose the hypocrisy. You have to. When you start coloring fairness as racism while protecting white advantage, it's perverse and must be seen for what it is. It's not okay. So you gotta let them see, y'all. Democracy is not a sunlit museum artifact. It's a battlefield. It's a marathon. It's not a race. You have to be willing to run for as long as possible to reach that finish line. That's where we are. Because right now, y'all, we are their last line of defense when it comes to democracy. We have to be loud. We have to be informed. We have to be active. Okay? Because I'm going to be watching what's happening with this Louisiana case and stuff with the Supreme Court. Now, the Supreme Court starts their next term in October. Understand your vote, your voice, your activism. I promise you, all of that stuff still matters. If it didn't still matter, the powers that be wouldn't work so hard to undereducate you, miseducate you about what's happening in your government. There's a reason why they do that. They do that because they understand the power that you possess. We can all fight this together. All hope is not lost, contrary to what everybody likes to say. All hope ain't lost. All hope is not lost. Where we are with all of this, where we honestly are with all of this, is we're just honestly at the beginning of this hardcore fight. What did I say? It's a marathon. It's not a race. You got to be willing to run a long race if you're going to stop these people. And until you're willing to do that, until Americans are willing to make the sacrifice to do that, it's never going to stop. Okay? I need you to see that. All is not lost. There is hope for change. And as long as you have hope, you can always change your circumstance. Always. I thank you for listening to this episode today of the Straight No Chaser podcast. You can check out all of the episodes that I have done on all streaming platforms. Check out straightfactsnofilter.com to get information about all the platforms that I'm on. But you can certainly listen to podcast episodes on Patreon, Spotify, and YouTube. And I'm also in other places as well. I thank you for your time today. And I'm going to end this podcast like I do all my podcasts. Don't you let nobody live rent free in your head, baby. Don't feed the trolls, and you can accomplish anything you put your mind to as long as you stay consistent. Peace.